All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Athlete Series, which is our new podcast series featuring various athletes and all the amazing work that they've done and learning from them in terms of how that can translate into our day-to-day lives. Today, I have an amazing guest, Clay Stanley, three-time Olympian and Hall of Famer. Very, very excited to be talking to Clay. Clay, thanks for taking time to be on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, cool. So I'm actually on vacation, which is why I'm completely bundled up because I think it's like 40 something degrees. I'm in Aspen, Colorado at the moment. And I'm ready to do a little skiing maybe the next few days. So maybe I'll have some tips from you. I don't know, that'll help me in that realm too. But an unusual look for me, I'll say, because it is quite cold here. So thanks for taking time again. So Clay, I wanted to ask if you could, just for the sake of context for our audience, tell us about your volleyball career, how it started. It doesn't have to be super long. I just want to give a little bit of context into who you are, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Yeah, I guess. Where do you want to start? I mean, at the very beginning, or do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you started playing volleyball pretty young, or how did that sort of
go? Well, played for fun at an early age, and then with the Outrigger Canoe Club in Hawaii, where my family was all members, and growing up, it's just a great place, for kids to get together. They have beach courts, and we all get together and would play on every weekend. And they had really, really good youth programs that sent kids of all ages to these junior tournaments and eventually the junior Olympic type tournaments. So got my start there.
Can I ask you a quick question? Because I've seen those courts at the Outrigger. They're kind of elevated, right? But those are all sand, right?
All sand courts. Yeah.
Okay.
And they have two main courts and then a baby court where all the young kids get to play, and we would use our memberships there to put bets and make for jumbo cokes and stuff, whoever wins and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
And waste our parents' money. But yeah, and from there I went to the University of Hawaii, where I played there for 4 years, and then left the University of Hawaii early to start my pro career, and then that started in Puerto Rico, and from there I joined the national team in 2000, the winter of 2000, so right after that summer games. And then there we would play basically 2 seasons. You play with the national team from about June to about September-ish, roughly, and that's the summer season for the U.S. team. And then we'd go overseas and play professionally in Europe. So during that September till back around to May, June-ish again, depending on how long your season goes there.
So constant.
So it's a year-round thing, and so I did that year-round for roughly, from 2000 to about 2016. So almost 16 years, but probably the last 3.5 years was kind of recovering from a couple of injuries that set me back, and which led me to retiring. So I got been very lucky and got to experience a lot of different countries. Lived in Greece for about 5 years and played in Russia for about 6.5, and then got to spend a year in Japan professionally. So
any favorite cities over the course of that time?
I love them all. They all have really good experiences for me, and maybe my experiences are a little bit biased from other people, just because of the success that I was able to have in each of those countries with each of the different teams. And it was definitely a progression from the start to the end of my career, just always moving forward, trying to get better and better every year. So things were definitely fun.
That sounds awesome. Well, when I was learning more about you, I saw that you've got a family of athletes and all into volleyball. I'm always curious when I talk to different athletes that, on the podcast, but just in general, how it starts, like where does that flame almost start, at what age, and like how does that start to become a thing for you? And I know you mentioned the courts over at Outrigger, but do you think your family was super influential, and like how did that play a role
Um,
for you?
yeah, I mean, my dad, was a big, star in volleyball, basically his whole career. And so he was always someone that I admired, growing up, just being proud of someone who was really good at volleyball. And anytime you saw my dad, and people who saw my dad, they all loved him, and they were like, oh wow, John Stanley, man, he's so good. But I mean, for me, I did play, like, so I got started maybe with Outrigger, probably, I think it might have been 12 and unders. And we had a good group of guys that we would always play together with. And up until I got to high school, I was playing. Then I got to high school, and then I stopped playing because it just, I don't know, it wasn't, the teams kind of split up. And so one group was like a year older than the other group. And so then the teams, the dynamic just changed. And so I just wasn't really into it. And then so I just kind of stopped when I got to high school, and didn't play any volleyball, and picked it back up the summer before my senior year. And that's when I discovered like the love for volleyball and the drive and to want to be good. And this is where I want to take my career choice. I was like, okay, I'm going to be good. This is what I want to do. And I was just raw too. It was like in a hitting line in a JO's tournament that summer, where I was just feeling it. I was like this feels really good. Like this is something that I want to do. So that was kind of like that spark, and it wasn't necessarily like from my dad or anyone else pushing me toward it. It was something that I made the decision to get back into, which I'm pretty sure my dad was pretty happy about.
Yeah,
I think my friends, one of my best friends, was still playing while I wasn't, and I think he went up to my dad and he's like, "Hey, where's Clay? What's he up to?" And my dad was like, "Oh, he's probably skateboarding somewhere."
Yeah.
So I'm safe to say that he's happy about the choice I made later on.
I agree. And I think that's that's a really interesting point, because I think that if it doesn't come from within, it's really hard to go far, right? I mean, even
Right.
all aspects of life, if it's not coming from you, it's really hard to take it to the next levels, whatever that level might be.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
No, I think so. And I think that's where maybe a lot of kids, who their parents just push, at an early age. And I always get nervous and worry about those, because it's just like, I didn't do any of that. And I found the sport that I wanted to do on my own, on my own time. And the amount of, I guess, practices, tournaments, high performance camps, all these things that they do right now, it's kind of, I think, overkill.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's intense. It's a lot for youth, to have that pressure too.
Yeah.
But clearly all the fun days on the sand courts played into, maybe some skill, obviously a lot of skill, that you just picked the ball up again, in high school, and you're like, oh wow, like this is natural.
There's a lot of things I think contributed, to maybe my development, I guess. I mean, we did a lot of the beach stuff growing up, surfing, down at the club, which provided surfboards for their members to take out. And I mean, even taking a break and skateboarding, for a long time, just getting balance doing that is, I think, beneficial, and just all these different sports, just you can combine as many sports as you want, and those will all provide you with some new skill and some new benefit, in your future.
That's very true. So when you picked up the ball again in high school, towards the end of high school, And you
Yeah.
said there was kind of that moment. Did you feel like at that point you're like, okay, I want to push my career, but were you thinking Olympian, like Olympic? What was
No,
the vision?
yeah. So the it was like small, I guess, short goals, like
Yeah.
not intentional. You know, it was like, okay, I want to play volleyball. I guess the next step is, okay, I got to get to college, right? And
Mhm.
so, and that was kind of a struggle too. I just wasn't the best student, you know, and it just school wasn't very interesting to me at the time, you know, and so it was short goals of college. Got to college, okay, and then you got to try to impress the powers that be in volleyball, and I didn't know who they were, and so I got picked to join the '99 Pan Am team and the University Games team. So went up California, tried out, made the team, and felt myself improve that summer, like greatly, and then came back to and then after when I came back playing during that season, I just felt myself kind of not improving, but kind of regressing. And that's where I made the decision to leave early, because I had one more year at the university, playing wise, and I opted out and went to Puerto Rico, played a summer there professionally, and then got invited to join the national team from that point. So, and that was goal number two, I guess, or step two, right? Was, okay, now I'm leaving college. How do I get into this national team setting or professional career setting? And it just, the chips kind of, you know, fell in place. You know, I'm sure there was maybe some influence outside of my knowledge, you know, like maybe my dad, you know, or coaches. But yeah.
I like that. And I like that because, you know, I feel like that's true for certain people in their career. And I'm going to translate a little bit here, but I think people want to solve for like, oh, I'm going to be X. And you're like, just take it one step at a time, move it along. You never know where it's going to go. And especially young people, I think they feel all this pressure to be like, I've got to decide exactly what I'm going to be when I grow up, and I got to figure out my passion and da da da. But you're proof that organically, you know, taking one step at a time and just continuing to develop your skill is going to take you to a level.
And not, you know, I felt too that, you know, my head, you know, your head's not getting like inflated, you know, with all these false, like, ideas that you're the greatest or something like that. Like, oh, I deserve to be here. It was more of kind of getting to the college, trying to be the best there, trying to get better there, then getting invited, not going into that setting like, oh, I'm the best guy here, like just being humble and trying to absorb as much knowledge and compete against other great athletes at the same time, you know, and keep climbing that ladder step by step, instead of trying to jump to the front of the line when you're not even ready to be there.
Yeah, for sure. How's give me a feel, you know, for our audience, what was a training schedule like for you? Like what was involved, like waking up really early, like what was involved with your training, you know, in preparation for these different things that you were doing, you know, over the course of time?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, where do you want to start? I guess, I mean, probably the best, I mean, people want to probably hear maybe the national team training kind of
Yeah, that
stuff.
sounds good. Yeah.
I mean, college was, you know, I mean, it was good training, you know, I mean, we trained every day. We had to get up early for conditioning and things like that. But it's not the same as, like, say, national team training, because now you don't have to worry about studies or school.
Yeah.
You're just, no, I mean, and for me that was important, right? And that's why I left, because, I mean, people probably don't want to hear it at the time, though, is I had no interest. The only thing I was interested in was playing volleyball, and that also reflected on my grades and things like that. And so once I got to the U.S. the national team, I was able to just focus on that, and then I had to learn how to train And I went through a bunch of, beginning injuries because my body wasn't quite ready for the type of trainings that we were doing. Like like twice a day, we'd be training early in the morning. We'd be in there doing some light volleyball stuff, maybe some conditioning, and then go down and hit the weight room. And then you got an afternoon training. So you'd go after the morning, you'd go eat, take a nap, wake up again, and then head back down to the gym. It was an all day thing, basically Monday through Saturday. And I think we get Sunday off.
Golly.
And I think the mornings would last an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then the evening trainings were maybe 2 to maybe even 3 hours sometimes. But running through all different types of skill sets and stuff like that. I guess an example too, they probably don't do it anymore, but because we were in Colorado Springs at the time, and that being in altitude, they had a serving machine, and we would do these serving drills, like reception drills.
Yep.
And the balls would be like this hard from just being dried out from the climate up there. And we'd end up having these gnarly bruises on our forearms, and then we'd have to like do the same drill the next day with these huge bruises on our forearms.
Jeez.
And we're just like, and then have to do some cardio stuff. And then, you'd see guys throwing up after, and that kind of stuff. Not as intense anymore, I'm sure. But
yeah.
But yeah, there was a different level of training, I think, back then versus now. Obviously, they've learned a lot in sports science and recovery and things like that. But there's something to be said about going through that hard stuff in the beginning to develop, just a tougher mindset and something, where you're able to push through difficult times more so than just everything's like, oh, hey, are you okay? Are you? You look tired. Let's take a break. And I think there's a lack of, that extra oomph, but who knows?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned mindset. I'm really curious, how do you feel like how do you exercise your mindset in those times when it's just like super tough? Just to have the discipline to keep pushing forward, or whether it's a challenging situation or you're out like, and the fans are going crazy and you're just like, oh my God, like this really matters. Like, how do you, what's going through your mind in times like that?
Well, I think you develop that mindset in practice. People, I guess I'm not going to say people, but I think they underestimate the value of practice, maybe. It's a place where you're supposed to be honing your skill, so that when you get into those difficult moments, you can do the job that needs to be done, right? And so that means, like, let's say, take serving for an example, and a coach has you out there and you're in a drill and you're like, okay, I got to get 7 out of 10 serves in, and you have a choice to make. Okay, are you going to go and hit 10 out of 10 serves that you're going to hit in a game, or are you going to just try to get 7 serves in just to, pass the drill and not get, punished with some extra conditioning or something like that? And I think it's those types of, thinking in the sense of, okay, I'm going to go, if I miss 10 out of 10, okay, I missed 10 out of 10, but hopefully, and then I'm going to do the running or whatever I got to do after. But then the next practice, maybe you're not missing 10 out of 10.
Yep.
And then eventually you're going to get to where you're just, reaching the goal that you want to be at in a game situation. So I think maybe it's kind of like that kind of mental training.
Do you self-talk, like in some of those moments? Do you talk to yourself like, okay, like, or do you block certain things out, or like?
I think you end up blocking a lot out. and you probably do self-talk, not, I mean, maybe it's not necessarily like looking in a mirror, oh,
Yeah.
you can do this. To me, it was more like, stop being a pussy, get over and let's do this, like,
Yeah.
you got this, you've trained for it, and eventually you don't necessarily need that. Then it becomes taking a deep breath, finding a rhythm, finding a routine to do things, letting things go, resetting,
I love that.
yeah, just kind of letting go of mistakes, because yeah, I mean, in the end, I mean, it's all skills that you develop over time eventually.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you get them all at the end, and then you get hurt, and then you're like, man,
You're like,
now what
oh.
am I going to do with all this stuff?
But no, I
Yeah.
love what you said about, you're practicing all these things and the importance of practice, and even practicing your mindset, you're practicing, the physical ability, the skill, everything else. And eventually you get to the point where it becomes routine and it becomes part of who you are. And it's funny because some of the younger guys, even that I work with, they're like, how do you know all this? I'm like, you know how many
Yeah.
times I've done this? Like,
What
so,
did they say, right? It takes at least 10 years just to even like feel comfortable in a single skill,
yeah, it's
Yeah, I
true.
mean, it's a huge development and progression. I mean, I can picture like myself, like I would get frustrated, I'd get mad, I'd hit the pole or I'd hit the ground after a mistake, and slowly as my career went on and I got better and better, I stopped hitting the pole, I stopped yelling, and I stopped getting upset at stuff that like there's no reason to get upset at. And then eventually some of those things that you're getting so mad and you're hitting things, you're like, well, now I could possibly hurt myself. And you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this kind of dumb stuff anymore. And maybe I should find another way to handle the stress, or, and yeah, things like
That's
that.
cool. I
Yeah.
like that. That's really cool advice. So, I've seen best scorer, best server, most valuable player, a lot of really impressive titles for you. And I guess in that context, I'd love to just hear your thoughts on playing as a team, but even more so about that. I mean, that's leadership status right there. That's the skill that you developed, but also bringing value to your team and those around you. What do you think of when you think of leadership, or what do you think of being a good leader in those settings that you've had in the past?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, it's for my role, like as being a leader, I was never like a coaching leader. Not saying that I didn't, like talk to players or things like that, but as far as I guess how I led was more of through my actions kind of thing. And kind of just, I guess, trusting my teammates to do their job and knowing the job that I needed to do. And the better I did my job and the harder I worked at my job, hopefully that rubbed off, and provided some kind of maybe physical or visual influence to my teammates. And I didn't want to let my team down either, like that, what a terrible feeling that is, it's like, I mean, and we've all been there, or hopefully, I mean, I hope people get there, because then it shows you what you need to improve on. But yeah, it just sucks, and I never wanted to be in that position. I always wanted to do my job and be good at it. That way I could provide, the performances that was needed of me to help my team win, but yeah, I never really, I would never think of myself as a leader, but people would tell me, hey, Clay, you know what? You don't have to be that leader, because you do a pretty good job of what you're doing right now, that kind of stuff. And that's, I guess.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot to be said for the leaders that do lead by example, because that's definitely a part of, I would think, I like to think, I'd hope to think that the way that people would view, leaders that are at our company, or even the way that I would work is, and I've heard some of the younger guys be like, gosh, so-and-so on the team just really motivates me because they're working so hard. Now I feel like I've got to like raise my bar because this guy next to me is pushing himself as a leader.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I can see that too. Yeah, just who wants to be the guy who's not working that hard? I mean,
yeah.
And if I felt like, I guess also when you want to be great at something and you see somebody else working harder than you and benefiting from it, and if you're just going to twiddle your thumbs and be like, well, I'm okay, I don't need to work. And I mean, then you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to get better.
Completely agree. Well, yeah, it was, I don't know if you watched there was the Netflix episode with Michael Jordan called The Last Dance. And he said, because he's much more, I mean, he's a great example, I'm sure, but he was much more like, holding his team accountable, but in a different, more direct way. And I was just curious, like, if that was because I think he has the quote in there, like, I brought people along when they didn't want to be brought along, I'm like, whoa, that's intense.
No, he would. Yeah, he's on another level of leadership, I think. Yeah.
A different type.
But he was a big competitor too, I think. And he didn't have a problem like getting in people's faces, and like letting them know.
How do you feel like you are as a competitive, when you were playing really competitive, do you think like that, or how do you?
I mean, I knew I was competitive, I mean, I just knew, again, where I wanted to be and who I wanted to be as a player. And I hated losing, and I hated seeing people do better, I mean, selfishly. And I mean, that just provided, the focus for me to get better.
Were you trash talking, stuff like that?
No, never.
Okay.
I never trash talked, I don't think. I mean, maybe there were times, that maybe someone was trash talking. And again, I think I tried to let my actions and my play shut them up in a sense, and I think people would say I was probably just focused, maybe had an intense focus, I mean, they always would mention me, the way I looked through the net. They looked like I wasn't happy or something. But that wasn't it. I just, I was kind of hungry. I wanted to win, and I just wanted to kind of hit the shit out of the ball.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. How tall are you? Do you mind me asking?
6'9". Yeah.
Okay. Wow, it's really tall. It's amazing. Yeah, when I saw some of those things like best server, best scorer, I was like, holy cow. Like, yeah, it's really impressive. And I would imagine you have to be, I mean, besides your skill, which is obviously great, like you have to be just like laser focused when that ball comes at you. You're just like, I know what I'm going to do. Yeah. So, yeah. And kind of on the flip side of leadership, you talked on it a little bit, but I'm, being a team player, or even like when you see someone who's struggling, like what do you feel like is a good team player? Holding their end of the deal, playing their role.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to be able to like approach a teammate that's struggling and provide some sort of feedback to help bring them back up and remind them that, you know what, hey, you're here for a reason, and you're maybe highlight their positives, while not focusing on the negative that is right now. But without being like kind of, I don't know how you would put it, but like sugarcoating everything, like not making it so sweet, but being brutally honest, like, like, hey, you're an amazing passer or something, or the way you do your job, and I've seen you do your job. Let's go. Let's get your head out of the gut. Let's go right now. Okay. Something like, I mean, a little bit different, I think, maybe in a business sort of setting, but just because maybe the window of time is a lot shorter in an athletic event, where, yeah, but who knows?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And it, well, I mean, I think it plays out sometimes in our jobs. If we're in the middle of going live on a weekend, there's no time. Like our client's waiting for that thing to be up
Yeah.
Monday morning when they show up at the office. And no one's blaming anybody over that weekend. Then once it's
Right.
done, you sit back and you're like, okay, what happened? And
Yeah.
it's hard to have that conversation and not sugarcoat it, because no one wants to hurt somebody's feelings. And
Yeah.
it's tough.
And I mean, it could be something like as simple as a strong look and a tap on the back, and just like giving hey, let's go right now. Okay. Let's pick it
I
up.
like that.
And it doesn't have to be this big elaborate like scene in a movie or a long speech of glory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. That's true. And that could be more effective, because it's like the less you say, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't even want to know what he's about to say. I can read it on his face.
Yeah. And that's where, again, you have to trust your team that they've put in the time and the training, that when things hit the fan, you're able to just give them a glance and they know that you have their back, and vice versa,
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, I've got sort of one last thought that I want to get out of you before we end today's podcast. I mentioned earlier, but our audience is a lot of people maybe earlier in their career, maybe a little further along in their career. And we're always, I can speak for myself too. I'm always looking for, how can I tone some of these muscles that I have, these business muscles or these mind muscles, to help me do more in my career, help me go further and reach another level in, my life. I mean, it could be any aspect. What would you say that over the course of your career as very impressive career as an athlete, what has that taught you that you feel like you could share with our audience?
The first thing that just pops in my head is something that is going to make you better is surround yourself with people that are better than you.
That's great.
I mean, the main reason why I left college is because I was surrounded by greatness, and then went back. Not to say that my college team wasn't great. They all had their value, but playing with the best players all over the world only made me better. And if we're looking for something that's going to improve people's skills, find the people in your field that do their job great and learn from them. Yeah.
I love
that would be the best thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Because if you plateau at a certain level based on your surroundings, right? So then you want to keep raising that.
Yeah. You don't want to be the best. You want to find someone better than you that, okay, why is he better? Why is she better? And kind of take little snippets or snapshots and make them your own and progress that way. I think would be probably my quick.
I love it. It's very relevant. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, that's the end of our podcast today. Clay, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your thoughts, and of course your story is super impressive, and everyone can go look it up, because I found a lot of information about you around. I was blown away.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best with the future podcast.
Sounds good.